Welcome to Colors, Taste, and Sounds. I am your host, Miguel Meza, and this is my review of the 2024 film Challengers. Challengers is an MGM slash Amazon picture produced by a few of their studios, and Amy Pascal, along with Zendaya and the director himself, Luca Guadagnino, known for 2017's Call Me By Your Name and the 2018 remake of Suspiria. He's kind of a fan favorite auteur, likes to stick to a lot of dramatic elements and whatnot. He apparently came across the script after reading, or he came across the script while on the set of the film Oh Night Divine, and he thought it was really, really good. And it's funny because it's actually penned by Hollywood newcomer Justin Kritzkis, I want to say, who apparently wrote the film after seeing the 2018 U.S. Open match between Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams. Pretty iconic, sports scene there. Along with reading Andre Agassi's memoir Open, there's a lot to admire about the writing in this movie because even when the characters are in somewhat drab situations, their dialogue doesn't really come across as stilted, and everything seems to have a purpose, albeit it should be noted that it is not as tight as you would typically find in your Hollywood affair. It definitely kind of feels a little bit like a play at some points, which is not to say that's a bad thing, but, it's notable for sure. The music is done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. This is the duo that have done like a ton of movies together and have done some great scores like The Social Network and Waves comes to mind. However, in this instance, it doesn't really feel like they're entirely in their element. Maybe it's an editor thing. I'll get into that a little bit more. And I don't like to hate on editors. Their job is hard. Your job is hard. But it is really odd when some of the like bombastic music is rattling on during dialogue. And it kind of distracts away from what they're actually saying because it sounds like they're trying to go for like this Nicholas Winding Refn like from a Too Old to Die Young kind of like dramatic conversation, but it doesn't really hit. When it does hit, it's actually punctuating some of the more like intense visual elements of the film, like the tennis sequences and whatnot.
Fine. Look, I'm happy they like you here. I just don't need you to be my coach. But the more I've thought about it, the more I realize.
So it's a little bit inconsistent in that regard in its usage, but the music itself is, it's just fine. Something to note, though, when it comes to sound is the sound design in this movie is brilliant. I wish I had the name of the people that, did it on screen or whatever, but it was really cool to hear the sounds of, like, the bouncing balls on top of the court and the way that the rackets were getting smashed on the floor and just the way they were able to capture like the breaths and everything. I think that it was really, really a delight to hear, and it was something that was a standout for this movie. So I definitely want to give it credit for that. Now the film had a budget at around $50 million. $50
million?
And it only made around $90 million at the box office, which is pretty modest for what is essentially just a Zendaya vehicle disguised as a semi-erotic sports drama. It's kind of what you expect. It's par for the course. Now, the film itself, plot-wise, is about a tennis duo in love, competing over a woman, all while dealing with the pressures of being the best tennis players around or whatever. It might seem like it's a pretty simple premise, but the twists and turns are just, the kind of melodrama that you would find like on soap operas and stuff like that. But that's not to say that it's bad. That's not to say that it's bad. I'll get into the ifs and buts about it. So Josh O'Connor, this is when it comes to cast. Josh O'Connor plays Patrick Zweig, and Mike Faist plays Art Donaldson. These are two budding tennis prodigies. Their intertwining dynamics make them a genuinely interesting duo to watch on screen. The best moments are when they're acting off of each other, the kind of subtle looks they give to each other, the little bits and pieces that they have. It really adds to this idea that they have the camaraderie of people that have been on the road together. So I think that it ties into the whole motif that they are kind of like meant for each other, and we'll get more into that into like the spoilers and whatnot. But then there's Zendaya's character Tashi Duncan, who essentially serves as a semi-antagonist to this movie to a degree. She has this presence and aura, about her, Zendaya, the actress, just as a credit to her, but it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, you see, because her character is so overwhelming and overbearing in each scene that it becomes a little bit monotonous after, fucking 2 hours of this. Perhaps with a better edit, cutting about 15 to 30 minutes this entire movie could feel a little bit more dynamic and showcase this chaos that her character really starts to create in between these characters. You know, even though she says she doesn't want to, she ends up doing it anyway, knowing what she's gonna do and whatnot, and the ramifications of it. To me, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, you know, she's like kind of like Darth Vader in Star Wars. You know, whenever she shows up, she's a big presence, right? But we barely see any of Darth Vader, and that adds to the presence, you know, that he has. Well, Tashi Duncan, this character, you get to see her all the time, even when it's not even about her. You get to zoom in right into her face. It's just she's all over the place in this movie, and I get that. But even if you look at the marketing, like the big poster everybody sees is of her face, and you can barely see the guys in her glasses. Like what? I didn't even know that until I actually was editing the image for my website. Like ridiculous. So, anyways, when it comes to the actual movie itself, there's something that needs to be just we need to address this straight up ahead. These damn title cards that just keep telling us 1 week later, 2 years before, 5 years later, earlier that night, tiebreaker, halftime, postseason. It just keeps everything is just so visually unappealing, and they're using that Rockwell extra bold or whatever it is font, and it's just so unappealing to the eye. It makes the whole thing look like a commercial, as it were, in a commercial for Zendaya and whatever. And I understand that they're kind of playing on that commercialism aspect of it with that whole Ashton Martin kind of like ad being a background thing. I get that there's that, but just like a lot of elements in this movie that I think that they're trying to touch upon, it feels undercooked, like underutilized, half-baked type of stuff. So overall, I just hated this non-linear storytelling just because of how back and forth it was. I think that if you did a straightforward plot in this instance with maybe a couple of, you know, flashbacks here and there, it would have worked. But this was a lot of like, and it goes back and forth. Sometimes you don't even know really, and you have to guess based on like the makeup that they're wearing and like, oh, like they're supposed to be older, or there's an old Mountain Dew logo or Pepsi logo. Now I know it's fucking 2006, you know. So that was really something that I wasn't a big fan of because I felt like it was confusing to the actual plot. But maybe that's just me. When it comes to the visuals of this movie, you know, I'm speaking about like, you know, the ugliness of these title cards and whatnot. There are interesting visual elements that deserve to get some respect here, and especially the camera work during the actual tennis scenes are really impressive. There's a POV shot from the ball. There's a POV shot from, you know, one of the guys. You know, they're like he's playing it like you're playing an FPS, but it's a tennis FPS. And there's a shot from like the ground as the ball hits it, like it's hitting on the glass, so you see it from underneath. It's just one of those things where they were able to really get like, you know, the feel and the intensity of a tennis match and capture it really well. I just wish that it was the highlight of the movie, the spotlight, and not every time I'm seeing these awesome tennis shots, I'm like, oh man, this scene is so intense. We just cut to Zendaya. And she has like this facial reaction shot. She feels like Brock in the Pokemon series, where it's like he has that same stock like face, and they just put him on like everything. No matter what kind of battle Ash is in, they cut to Brock like in the crowd, like, "Hey, you gotta do this, Ash." You know, that's what she was doing. She did just cut to her. I'm really rambling way too much about her in this. Like, come on now. When all that when it comes to the camera work is great. Don't get me wrong, but some of the interior work and stuff like that, it just looked like really standard movie stuff. It wasn't anything to drive. It wasn't anything to write home about. And some of the it just looked kind of bland. Like MGM, you couldn't spring for a nicer hotel for them to film in. I mean, I get that the tournament setting has to be like in a modest. I think it was in Colorado or something. So it kind of makes sense. But overall, I just thought that the interiors look very bland. Kind of like your average normal TV show that you'd see on like the CW or something like that. It didn't look all that, you know, high budget. And it's not a super high budget film, don't get me wrong. But there's ways to light these scenes to make them look a little bit more dynamic. For example, the scene, you know, the infamous The Meme scene, when they're having the little, like, you know, interaction with each other. It's shot very warm and stuff like that, and that was really cool. And then they go the opposite route, and every other shot is bland. I know that's kind of supposed to be, like, in the future, I mean. Like, in the in terms of the movie, like chronologically later on in the future. I'm thinking to myself that they wanted it to be looking bland, so they kind of mimics like, oh, like they're now in like the normal bland life. But I feel like it could have been done like in a cool, sleek way. Like if you've seen Nocturnal Animals, I feel like that was a really good way to shoot interiors that don't make them look bland, but highlight kind of like how you can see how it's bland. If that makes sense, I don't know. But one big gripe I have about this movie, just in general, is this like really random, gratuitous shower scene that serves no purpose until the very, very end, and it doesn't feel like it's earned at all. And it's this scene where essentially one of them is angry. By the way, I'm gonna be calling them brown hair or dark hair guy and blonde hair guy because I can forget, and Zendaya for the rest of this review because I'm not gonna bother. But there's this one scene where basically the blonde hair guy is mad and the brown hair guy is on his phone. He's looking at Tinder, and then this other tennis player guy comes in and his wang is out, and then other guys are wangs out. And it's just weird because it kind of has like this shot. I feel like it was deliberate, like a wide shot of just showing four guys in their wangs. And then I guess it's supposed to tie in because later on, during a scene when the brown hair guy goes into the sauna with the blonde hair guy's like, what are you doing? Like, waving your dick around at me. And so it's supposed to be like a play on like, masculinity, I guess. But to me, it came across as just kind of like unnecessary and gratuitous and kind of like just really in your face, like literally. And it reminded me of that scene from the unrated version of Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, where John C. Reilly's on the phone, and this guy, he's talking to his wife or whatever, and he's trying to like say like, oh, I'll be home or whatever, and this guy walks up to him, and his dong is like right in his face or whatever, and it's played for laughs because of the absurdity of how it's just there, and that's a gigantic comedy movie, like a joke film. And here it was just random, and we can go back to normal editing now. And then there was a bunch of other weird kind of like editing bits that I didn't really like this bizarre camera cut right here. And then you can show it right here. I'll give you the runtime. Yeah. So, back to the plot. Let's finally get around to the actual nitty gritty. This is gonna be, I guess, a spoiler if you don't want to, if you don't want to be spoiled from this movie. It's technically still new, and some people do care, so I just want to make sure. By the way, you can edit out that part. Back to the plot. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start from the beginning. Like I said, this movie is non-linear. The duo are best buds. They're trying to be the best they can be. They both fall for this Zendaya, who's this tennis prodigy. The dark-haired guy gets to go with Zendaya first. The blonde-haired guy's like, tell me if you guys did it. The dark-haired guy's like, oh, no. And he's like, blonde-haired guy's like, do my signature taunt if you did. And the dark-haired guy does his signature taunt. And that will play off later. Don't worry. So Zendaya and dark-haired guy break up because of some fight. It's really lame. Then later on, Zendaya breaks her leg during like some game in a gnarly way. It was awesome. Just like the way it was shot and how random it was. It was a legit like, whoa. Blonde hair guy is there for her while dark hair guy wasn't. So, she gets with blonde hair guy. They become successful. She becomes a trainer. He becomes a star. They have a kid. He wants to retire and she's like not feeling it. Now the dark haired guy is back and he's set to face off against the blonde haired guy. And despite the fact that the dark haired guy is kind of a loser now, he's like out for this one victory or whatever. And he's also trying to get at Zendaya. He goes up to her and is like, hey, what's up? Gives her his number literally and is like, hit me up. I want you to train me and also get jiggy with it. And she's at first like, no. But then I guess reluctantly she eventually calls him in the heat of the night and she does it. And she maybe regrets it. We don't know really. It's up in the air. So they sleep together. She asks the dark-haired guy, hey, throw the game so that my blonde-haired guy can go out on top at least. And she's like, I guess maybe we'll see. And then it leads to like the big match, the super intense, best scene of the whole movie. dark-haired guy starts to throw the match, and then the blonde-haired guy, he's like looking at him, and he's like, "What's going on?" And the dark-haired guy gives him the gesture from earlier, saying like, "I smashed your girl last night, basically, dude." And the blonde-haired guy freaks out. He almost throws the match, and then they decide, fuck it, and then they decide to go ham. They go back and forth, back and forth. It's this epic clash, and you're like, "Who's gonna win? Who's gonna win?" Zendaya's looking, by the way. Of course, I have to keep cutting to Zendaya. And it's so epic. And as soon as it gets to a crescendo and they're hitting and they're getting closer to the net, they stop and they go for a big hug. And the crowd erupts with cheers. And and they cheer on in slow motion. Zendaya cheers in slower motion. Big bro hug. They were meant for each other all along, I guess. There, I saved you 2 hours of your life. And I'm kidding, obviously. It's not that bad. It's not a bad movie. I wouldn't even say that. But that's the issue of this movie. It's a very simplistic story, and it takes itself with so much grandeur, takes up such a big runtime, and it doesn't really match the quality of the filmmaking. It's a serviceable drama at best with a few standout qualities like sound design, camera work, and some of the acting / writing. But everything else is okay. Some might find it erotic, and maybe I'm missing out on those qualities because I'm not big on the whole sweaty nose dripping thing. But to me, bad filmmaking isn't sexy. And this movie isn't bad, but it's not all that great either. So overall, I give this movie a 4.3 out of 10. A thumbs down with a star rating of 2.5 out of 5. Whatever you want to put on the screen right there, I'd appreciate that. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're into like Netflix shows or reality TV. It's kind of geared towards that audience. It doesn't really transcend its own disguise as a big commercial for Zendaya, who again produced this movie. She's trying to be like those stars like Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. I get it, I get it. I think Tom Holland does the same thing. I'm sure Chalamet does it, he will do it, whatever the case may be. I don't want to sound too harsh with this movie, but I really wanted it to be a grandiose sports tale drama with an intriguing love story that was a vehicle for the two, leads, but it really wasn't, and it felt kind of like a lot of the motifs and stuff felt undercooked and underutilized overall. I think this is like $50 million. This is like $1 million 50 Shades of Grey with a little guy on guy magic thrown in there for good measure. I wouldn't say this is a bad movie per se, but it's not exactly it, Anyways, so that was my review for Challengers. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share it, all that jazz. Follow me on Letterboxd. Follow me on Instagram. All the things will be linked and whatnot. Follow me everywhere. And hope you like this video. This is going to be the first of hopefully many. Thank you to my editor, Sabrina. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again. Have a great night, and bye-bye.